blood-sucking episode of Seraph of the End Vampire Reign, Yu, Yoichi, and Kimizuki finally get a hold of their cursed demon weapons. Very similar to the previous episode where Yu was fighting against that one axe demon who was trying to take over his mind and his body. This week's episode was pretty much the same thing. Copy and paste, add 2 new characters. That's this week's episode. However, there was some nice twists, some turns, and a little bit of mystery. Case in point, the character of Kimizuki. We actually don't get to see him defeating his demon or making the contract. I think this is a smart move that they're holding off on this, because I can't wait to see the reveal of what his powers are going to be, who his demon is going to be. I'm just excited to see what that's all about. And that brings us to Yu. Basically, this is exactly the way it went down last time, where the demon is manifesting itself as the dead members of his family. They're making him feel bad, telling him that he ran away, that he should have saved them, that he shouldn't consider all of his new friends his new family, and they shouldn't forget about him. And this is going to give the demon an opportunity to try and take over his body. But Yu is not going to have any more of that bullcrap, and he decides to say, "Give me my power. Where's my weapon? I need it to protect my new friends." And that's when he finally decides to make a pact with the demon known as Ashoramaru. Ashoramaru takes the form of this big black cloud of death with red eyes, but its true form is actually this cute little girl with long wavy blue hair. She also has these dark elf ears, these red eyes, and these creepy fangs. She's kind of similar to the vampires that we've seen in the show, but I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more about Ashoramaru as the series is going to go on. Ashoramaru also reassures you that if he ever does mess up, she's just going to take over his body, and that's pretty messed up. I'm sure it's going to happen a couple of times in this series. Maybe he's going to lose control, and Ashoramaru's going to come out and just go crazy, devastating with all the attacks. I can't wait to see what Yu's abilities are going to be, because he has a katana blade. You know, they could do just about anything with that. It's really just a blank slate for all of the cool abilities that he's going to have, and really, they're even holding off on showing that in the intro, and that's really surprising, because the intro of the show, as good as it is incredibly spoilery. I mean, we already know the weapons the other 2 characters are going to get. Of course, you have the character of Kimizuki, who's going to get those 2 blades. You have the katana blade for Yu, and then that brings us to Yoichi, who's honestly the star of this week's episode, because basically there's this whole metaphor that he's having to go through where he's going to have to learn to get over his fears and crawl out from under the bed in order to sort of save himself, but to save his friends as well. They go through a number of different flashbacks with him and his sister, and there are some important details here. Like, I like the fact that they actually reveal that the person who killed his sister is that one blue-haired vampire by the name of Lacus. This guy has a design and he has a name, and that ultimately means that him and Yoichi are eventually going to battle with one another, and I think that's going to be pretty freaking intense. But really, the biggest shock of this week's episode is that initially, Yoichi ends up losing to the demon. It ends up taking over his body, and it transforms him into this half-demon, half-Yoichi form, where he has horns, fangs, and these weird freaky eyes, and he's able to make use of this demon bow and arrow, which has a really nice design, very similar to the other cursed weapons that we've seen. Really, it has the whole black neon green effect to it, but I think that's awesome. It's one of my favorite combination of colors. So, basically, this is the first test that Kimizuki and Yu are going to have to go through, which is they're going to have to fight against Yoichi, and ultimately, as cool as it is, they basically just end up talking him down and giving him the metaphor of him having to crawl out from under the bed and face his fears. And now that the team is finally gathered with their weapons, they can go to the front lines and kick some vampire ass. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Seraph of the End? It was pretty good. Basically, it was a very nice setup episode. You know, it's no shock that these guys were going to get out of this situation without any problems. The intro of the show showed that they're all going to have very distinct weapons, so I knew they were going to be just fine. The whole deal with Yoichi, though, that was kind of surprising. I was thinking maybe he was going to have a different sort of, like, connection with his demon. Maybe the demon form is going to come out a little bit more, but no, he's just going to be same old Yoichi. In fact, one of the funniest scenes from this week's episode is actually when he finishes the test and he's saved by his friends. He just drops the bow and immediately starts running and crying like a little bitch right into Yu's arms. It's a really funny scene, and it just fully demonstrates what type of character Yoichi is, and I really think he is going to be important to the group. We're just going to have to watch him grow a little bit more. The other things I liked about this episode is how they pretty much just got through it. Every single character got through the test, End of the story, let's get to some freaking action. My first thought was maybe each episode was going to be dedicated to a single character fighting against the demon. No, it's not really that complex whatsoever. They get through it. On the technical side of things, animation and artwork looked pretty clean and consistent this week. There were some pretty good action scenes with a lot of jumping around, some crazy Spider-Man, almost parkour-like moves with the characters just jumping through the air, fighting with their weapons. You fighting against Yoichi when he was taken over by the demon was pretty cool. And I actually like when the demon first came out, how the actual statue of its face had this huge crack which ran down the middle, signifying that it had actually just come out into the world. I thought that was really awesome. Otherwise, it was just sort of an okay setup episode. All the characters get their weapons. Now we can finally get to the real part of the story. Otherwise, it's still an important episode for those who have been following the anime, because we get to see the characters get their weapons for the first time. And of course, shit's just about to get real from here. So, I'm going to give this week's episode a 3 out of 5. I thought it was a pretty solid episode that you should definitely check out if you've been following the series, or if you're a fan of the manga version, check out the anime version. You might see something you like. So I thought this was a pretty decent episode, but what about you guys? Did you watch this week's episode of Seraph of the End? If you did, please tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite character who appeared this week? Do you have a favorite weapon that you saw in this week's episode? If you could have a demon weapon, what would it be? Please tell me in the comments section. Thank you guys again for watching my video. Make sure to like it, share it with all your friends, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on social media. Thank you again, and as always, stay dandy, baby.